It was supposed to be a simple dinner, a catch-up session over steak and potatoes with my son Michael and his new fiancée Laura. I hadn't seen much of him since the divorce a few years back. Life had taken its toll on all of us, and I was trying to make amends in my own clumsy way. We sat in a cozy corner of the restaurant, the kind with dim lighting and dark mahogany furniture, the kind that made you feel important temporarily, as if the ambiance alone could patch up old wounds. I'd been living a modest life since the divorce, so this was a bit of a stretch for me, but I figured my son deserved it. As we talked, every word I uttered felt like I was navigating a minefield. Michael's face was stoic, betraying little emotion, but I could tell he was still harboring remnants of resentment. I understood. His mother, my ex-wife, had poisoned the well with her stories, painting me as the villain who tore our family apart. And maybe I was in part. But things were never that black and white. Laura was sweet, trying to fill in the awkward silences with tales of wedding plans and new job prospects. Her smile was kind, but I noticed her glancing at Michael for reassurance every time I spoke, as if gauging what the appropriate reaction should be. I couldn't blame her. It was an unfamiliar family dynamic. Then, halfway through the meal, just as I was beginning to feel a sliver of hope that maybe, just maybe, we could leave the past behind, it happened. Michael leaned forward, his voice barely above a whisper, but laced with a tension that could cut glass. "Dad, you're embarrassing us at the restaurant." The words hit me like a freight train. I glanced around, confused, wondering what I'd done to deserve such a public dressing down. Maybe my tie was crooked, or perhaps I'd spilled some wine without noticing. But Michael's face told me it was deeper than that, something more profound, more personal. I took a deep breath, the kind you take right before stepping into a storm. I couldn't let this slide, not after I'd spent so many nights replaying the past in my mind, trying to figure out where it all went wrong. I waved over the manager, a young fellow who looked slightly nervous to be approached during the dinner rush. "Is everything all right, sir?" he asked, his voice steady but curious. I turned to Michael, a sharp determination in my eyes. "You think I'm embarrassing you, son? Let's clear the air right now." I could feel the tension thickening the air around us as the manager stood there, shifting uncomfortably from one foot to the other. Michael's gaze hardened, his lips pressed into a thin line. This wasn't just about the restaurant, I realized. It was about everything unsaid, every grievance left to fester beneath the surface. "Dad, this isn't the place," he said quietly. But there was a tremor in his voice that betrayed him. It was the voice of someone who had been holding back for too long. "Maybe it's exactly the place," I replied, my voice steady as I held his gaze. "You want to talk about why I'm embarrassing you? Let's do it." Laura was watching us intently, her hand resting gently on Michael's arm. Her eyes pleaded for peace, but I wasn't sure if that was possible anymore, not with so much at stake. The manager cleared his throat, sensing he was caught in the middle of something far beyond his pay grade. "Perhaps I should give you some privacy," he suggested, glancing towards the kitchen. "No, stay," I insisted. "I want witnesses." Michael's eyes flickered with a mix of anger and fear, a dangerous combination. "Dad, come on, not here." He was pleading now, but I wasn't backing down. I leaned forward, lowering my voice but keeping it firm. "You want to know why I'm here, why I called the manager over? It's because I'm done being the villain in your story. You need to hear my side, too." Laura's hand tightened on Michael's arm, as if to anchor him. "Maybe we should listen," she murmured softly. Michael hesitated, his defenses momentarily faltering. "Fine. Say what you need to say." I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of years of silence pressing on my chest. "You think I embarrassed you, but what about your mother?" I asked, carefully watching his reaction. "Do you know what she did to me? To us?" His expression shifted, a flash of something, uncertainty, doubt, crossing his face. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice quieter now, almost vulnerable. "She didn't just leave me, Michael. She betrayed us both. I found out after the divorce that she'd been siphoning money from our accounts for years to fund her affair. She left us broke, and she never told you why she really left, did she?" Michael's face paled, the color draining as if my words had struck him physically. "No, that's not—" He struggled to form the words, disbelief mingling with anger. That can't be true. I nodded, reaching into my pocket to pull out the evidence I'd been holding onto for this exact moment. A stack of bank statements, copies of emails, all the proof I'd painstakingly gathered over the years. I laid them on the table, the papers a silent testament to the betrayal that had fractured our lives. I didn't want to involve you until I was sure, until I could prove it, I explained, my voice steady but lined with emotion. But you deserve to know the truth. Laura picked up one of the papers, her eyes widening as she scanned the contents. Michael, this is... She didn't finish the sentence, but her reaction said enough. Michael's hand trembled slightly as he reached for the documents, his eyes scanning the damning evidence. I watched him, waiting for the realization to sink in, for the truth to finally shatter the illusion he'd clung to for so long. I could see the war waging inside him, the disbelief battling with the undeniable proof in front of him. Why didn't you tell me sooner? He finally asked, his voice breaking. Because I wanted to protect you, I answered honestly. I didn't want you to bear the burden of our mistakes, but I can't let you go on thinking I'm the villain without knowing the whole story. The manager, who had been standing silently, took a step back, clearly aware that the air had shifted between us. I'll give you a moment, he said, retreating discreetly to give us space. Silence settled over the table, heavy and profound. Michael looked up at me, his eyes swimming with conflicted emotions. I didn't know, he whispered, the admission raw and painful. For the first time in years, I felt a flicker of hope. Now you do, I said softly, reaching across the table to place a hand on his. And together, we'll figure out how to make it right. As the weight of everything unsaid hung between us, I could see the wall Michael had built over the years beginning to crumble. I had longed for this moment, the chance to finally clear the air and begin the arduous journey towards healing, but I knew better than to expect immediate reconciliation. Laura, still holding one of the documents, glanced between Michael and me, her expression a mix of sympathy and resolve. Michael, I think we need to talk about this more, she suggested gently. Not just here, but really talk about what happened. Michael nodded slowly, his anger giving way to a more introspective demeanor. Yeah, I think you're right, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. He looked at me, his eyes searching mine for some sign of the father he thought he'd lost. I need to know everything, Dad. I need to understand. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. You will, I promised him. There's a lot we need to unpack, but I'm here for it. All of it. We sat there for a moment, the noise of the restaurant fading into the background as we found ourselves wrapped in a bubble of our own making. The manager returned quietly, offering a respectful nod as he placed a fresh pot of coffee on our table. If there's anything else you need, just let me know, he said before disappearing again. Laura placed a reassuring hand on Michael's back. Let's take this one step at a time, she said softly. Maybe we could start by going over the details together, figure out what steps to take next. I nodded in agreement, grateful for her support. We'll get through this, I assured them both, and we'll make sure justice is served. Michael sighed, a deep exhale that seemed to release some of the tension he'd been carrying. I guess the first thing is to talk to a lawyer, right? Figure out if we can get back what she took? Absolutely, I replied. I've already started that process, but having you involved could make a big difference. Laura smiled encouragingly. And as for the restaurant scene, she added with a hint of humor, I'm sure we can come up with a better family outing next time. Despite everything, the corners of Michael's lips twitched upward into a small, reluctant smile. Yeah, maybe something a little less dramatic, he agreed, his voice lighter. As we stood to leave, I felt a sense of relief mixed with determination. This was just the beginning of a long road to justice, not just legally but within our family dynamic. I was ready to face it head-on, to reclaim what was rightfully ours, and to rebuild the trust that had been shattered. Outside the restaurant, the world seemed a little less daunting. Michael walked beside me, his posture more relaxed, as Laura wrapped her arm around his. It felt like the first step towards something better, something stronger. And I knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that we'd find a way to make sure justice was served. and perhaps just maybe find a way back to each other in the process. As we stepped out of the restaurant, the air outside was crisp and bracing, carrying with it a sense of renewed purpose. Laura and Michael flanked me, their presence a comforting reminder that I wasn't alone in this battle. I had spent months preparing for this moment, even before the confrontation at the restaurant. Now, with both of them by my side, I felt emboldened to see it through to the end. The discovery of Sandra's betrayal had been a slow burn, a series of small, unsettling clues that, when pieced together, painted a damning picture. It was the late nights, the mysterious phone calls, and the sudden, inexplicable expenses. I had wanted to believe it was something innocent, that my suspicions were unfounded. But when the reality hit, her affair, the diversion of funds from our joint accounts, it was like a gut punch, both humiliating and infuriating. I had quietly started gathering evidence, consulting with a private investigator who confirmed my worst fears. Sandra had been siphoning money into a secret account, planning for a future without me. The betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was financial and deeply personal. With Michael now aware of the truth, our first step was legal action. I had already contacted a lawyer, but with his involvement our case would be stronger. We needed to ensure that we could recover what she had taken, to hold her accountable for the years of deceit. "Tomorrow we meet with the lawyer," I told them as we walked to the car. "I want you to hear everything, Michael. You deserve to know the full story." Michael nodded, his expression somber but resolute. "I want to help, Dad. Whatever you need." Laura squeezed his shoulder. "We'll figure it out together," she assured him. "It's going to be tough, but we're here for each other." That evening, back at home, I sorted through the mountain of documents, preparing for our meeting. It was a tedious process, each piece of paper a reminder of Sandra's betrayal. But with each page my resolve hardened. This wasn't just about reclaiming what was mine, it was about justice, about ensuring she faced consequences for her actions. The next day at the lawyer's office, the atmosphere was tense but focused. Our attorney, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Lisa, laid out our options. She explained the process of freezing accounts, filing for divorce, and pursuing criminal charges if necessary. "Given the evidence, we have a strong case," Lisa said confidently, "but it will require patience and perseverance. Are you ready for that?" I glanced at Michael and Laura, their support unwavering. "We're ready," I replied, determination in my voice. "It's time to make things right." As we left the office, a sense of justice began to overshadow the anger and betrayal. We had a long road ahead, but I was no longer trudging it alone. Michael's understanding, Laura's support, and my own resolve were formidable allies. This was more than a fight for financial restitution. It was a battle for dignity, for truth, and ultimately, for our future. The path to justice had begun, and I was committed to seeing it through to the end. As we left the lawyer's office, the crisp air felt different now, charged with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in months. The betrayal, the lies, the financial deception, it was all laid out starkly, but so was our plan for justice. The weight of what needed to be done was heavy, but I was ready to bear it. Back at home, the atmosphere was tense, but purposeful. Michael and Laura sat with me at the dining room table, papers and files spread out like pieces of a puzzle we were determined to solve. I caught Michael watching me, his expression a mix of concern and determination. It reminded me of how much this had affected him too, how much he'd grown up in the past few months. "Dad," he said, breaking the silence, "I've been thinking, I want to testify. I mean, if this goes to court, I want to tell them what I know, what I've seen." His offer took me by surprise, a testament to his maturity. I nodded, feeling a swell of pride. "We'll discuss it with Lisa, but your support means everything, Michael." The following days were a blur of meetings and legal proceedings. Lisa worked tirelessly, filing the necessary paperwork to freeze the accounts Sandra had been funneling money into. In the meantime, we prepared for the inevitable confrontation, both in court and in person. I knew Sandra wouldn't back down easily, but with the mountain of evidence we had, she would have little room to maneuver. Then came the day of the big confrontation. Sandra had agreed to meet us under the guise of discussing family matters. As she walked into the restaurant, Ironically, the same place where my world had started unraveling. It felt like the closing of a circle. She looked surprised to see Michael and Laura with me, but quickly masked it with a strained smile. "Sandra," I began, my voice steady, "we're here to discuss the consequences of your actions, both personal and financial." She glanced around nervously, probably realizing we weren't alone in this fight. "Roger, whatever you think I've done—" "Stop," I interrupted, pulling out the document folder. "I know everything. The affair, the secret accounts. This isn't just a marital issue, Sandra. It's theft." Her face paled, and for a moment, the confident facade dropped. "Roger, please, let's talk about this privately." "No," I replied firmly. "You made this public when you involved our finances, our family. We'll be pursuing this legally." The manager, who had been briefed ahead of time, approached our table, ready to intervene if needed. "Is everything all right here?" they asked, a hint of support in their voice. "Yes," I answered, meeting Sandra's eyes. "We're done here." Sandra's expression shifted from shock to anger, but she knew she was cornered. There was no denying the evidence, no escaping the repercussions. As she stormed out, I felt a sense of justice, albeit bittersweet. The days that followed were filled with legal wrangling, but slowly we began to reclaim what was rightfully ours. The accounts were frozen, the assets re-evaluated. It wasn't just about the money. It was about restoring balance, about making sure she faced the consequences of her actions. The road to recovery was long, and there were moments of doubt. But with Michael and Laura by my side, I found strength in our unity, in our shared resolve to see this through. Justice wasn't just a word. It was our reality now, a testament to the power of truth and perseverance. In the end, Sandra faced the legal consequences of her deceit. It wasn't the ending I had once envisioned for our family, but it was the closure we needed. As I looked out the window one evening, watching the sun dip below the horizon, I felt a sense of peace. We had fought for justice and won, and now finally we could start to heal. As the dust began to settle after the legal battle, I found myself reflecting on how everything had started with that one moment at the restaurant. It was there, amid the clinking silverware and murmured conversations, that my son Michael had uttered those words that sparked a change in me. "You're embarrassing us at the restaurant." I remember the embarrassment and anger that had flooded me at that moment, not at Michael, but at the situation we were in, the mess that had become our lives because of Sandra's betrayal. It was a wake-up call, one that forced me to confront the uncomfortable truth that things had gone too far. After Sandra stormed out of the restaurant that day, the manager approached our table once more. "Is there anything else I can do for you?" they asked, genuine concern etched on their face. I shook my head, still processing everything. "No, thank you," I replied, my voice heavy with fatigue but also a newfound resolve. "I think we've done what we needed to do here." Michael looked at me, his eyes filled with a mix of relief and understanding. It was then that I realized just how much he had seen and understood, far more than I had given him credit for. He had been a silent witness to his mother's deceit, and now he was standing by my side as we worked to rebuild our lives. In the weeks that followed, the legal proceedings continued to unfold. Sandra's attempts to maneuver and manipulate the situation were met with the solid evidence we'd compiled. The court ruled in our favor, granting restitution for the funds she had siphoned off into her secret accounts. It was a victory, though it came with its own kind of sadness. Justice was served, but the family we once were was irreparably changed. There would be no going back to the way things were, no easy reconciliation. The betrayal had cut too deep, and the scars it left behind would take time to heal. But in the midst of this turmoil, there was also a sense of liberation. With each passing day, the weight of Sandra's deceit lifted slightly, leaving room for something new to grow. My relationship with Michael and Laura was stronger than ever, forged in the fires of adversity. We had faced the storm together and come out on the other side, a testament to the strength of our bond. As we settled into our new normal, I found myself more introspective. The experience had changed me, made me more aware of the fragility of trust and the resilience of the human spirit. It was a lesson hard learned, but one that I carried with me as we moved forward. In the end, justice was not just about reclaiming what was ours financially. It was about restoring a sense of dignity and integrity to our lives. It was about teaching my children the importance of standing up for what is right, even when it is difficult. Looking back, I realized that the moment in the restaurant had been a turning point. It had forced me to confront the reality of our situation and take decisive action. And while the journey had been painful, it had also been necessary. A painful but crucial step towards healing and new beginnings. As days turned into weeks, I found myself reflecting more often on that pivotal day at the restaurant. Michael's words had cut through the chaos of my emotions like a beacon, guiding me toward a clarity I hadn't realized I desperately needed. "You're embarrassing us at the restaurant." Those words were a catalyst, a spark that ignited the fire of change. The restaurant had been bustling with the usual Saturday crowd. Families enjoying their meals, the clatter of cutlery and the comforting aroma of comfort food. But for me, it was the stage for a confrontation I never anticipated. When I called the manager over, it wasn't about making a scene. It was about drawing a line in the sand. Sandra had left in a huff, anger and guilt battling for control on her face as she stormed out. Truthfully, I didn't know what I was doing when I asked the manager to come over. Perhaps it was an impulsive need to take control of a situation that felt wildly out of hand. Maybe it was a silent plea for an ally in what felt like an unwinnable battle. Whatever it was, it marked the moment I decided to stop letting Sandra's betrayal dictate the narrative of my life. In the days following the restaurant incident, I immersed myself in the investigation. I scoured bank statements, emails, and any other clues I could find. It was painstaking work, peeling back layers of deception that Sandra had meticulously crafted over the years. The more I uncovered, the angrier I became, not just at her, but at myself for not seeing it sooner. Michael, though young, had proven to be wise beyond his years. He was my rock, offering quiet support as I pieced together the evidence. We spent late nights at the dining table, poring over documents, his presence a constant reminder of what I was fighting for. My son had seen more than I realized, understood more than I had given him credit for. In a way, his unspoken strength fueled my resolve. Once I had gathered enough proof, the confrontation with Sandra was inevitable. I presented her with the evidence, a thick file of betrayal and dishonesty laid bare. Her defense was weak, her guilt palpable. She tried to turn it on me, playing the victim of a loveless marriage. But the facts were irrefutable. The divorce proceedings were swift and merciless, the court siding with the truth we had painstakingly unearthed. Legally, Sandra was held accountable for the financial deceit. The restitution was significant, but it wasn't just about the money. It was about reclaiming the integrity and respect she had stolen from our family. It was about showing Michael and Laura that justice, though sometimes delayed, is inevitable. The vengeance was not just financial. Socially, Sandra's reputation took a hit. The truth has a way of coming out. And in our community, the whispers grew louder. Friends who once turned a blind eye to her transgressions began to distance themselves. It was a small comfort, but it felt like justice in its own right. As for us, we moved forward, albeit scarred but resilient. I made a promise to myself to be more present for Michael and Laura, to rebuild the trust that had been so carelessly shattered. We learned to lean on each other, finding strength in our shared experiences. The restaurant incident, once a memory laced with embarrassment, had become a testament to our resilience. It marked the beginning of a journey that, while fraught with pain, led us to a place of healing and renewal. It taught me the power of standing up, of fighting back when wronged, and the importance of moving forward with dignity and courage. In the end, justice was not just about what was taken, but about what was regained. Our family, though changed, emerged stronger, bound by a renewed sense of purpose and integrity. And that, perhaps, was the greatest victory of them all. The morning sun peeked through the blinds, casting stripes of light across the living room floor. It felt like the first peaceful morning in a long time, and for a brief moment, I let myself savor it. Michael was already up making breakfast in the kitchen, a new ritual of ours since everything had changed. The smell of fresh pancakes filled the air, replacing the tension that used to permeate every corner of our home. As I joined him, I couldn't help but feel a swell of pride. My son had been my anchor through the storm, his quiet strength guiding me when my own resolve faltered. The restaurant incident had been a turning point, not just for me, but for us as a family. It forced me to confront truths I had been blind to take action when I had been paralyzed by betrayal. "Dad, I think the pancakes are burning," Michael's voice cut through my thoughts, pulling me back to the present. I chuckled, moving to help him with the pan. "Thanks, buddy. Looks like I still have a lot to learn." The ease with which we worked together now was a testament to how far we'd come. It wasn't just about rebuilding a life after Sandra's deceit. It was about rediscovering the bonds that truly mattered. The legal battles had been exhausting, but necessary. Sandra's financial betrayal had left scars that money couldn't heal, but reclaiming what was ours felt like the first step toward closure. The court had sided with the truth, recognizing the depth of her deception. The victory was bittersweet, though, because no amount of restitution could erase the hurt she caused. Yet there was a certain satisfaction in knowing that Sandra's actions had consequences beyond the courtroom. Socially, her unraveling was almost as public as her betrayal. Our community, once charmed by her facade, saw her for who she truly was. It was a small justice, but it reminded me that even the most carefully constructed lies eventually crumble under the weight of truth. Michael and I sat down at the table, our plates piled with slightly charred pancakes, and began to eat. It was a simple meal, but one that symbolized so much more. It was a promise of brighter days, of resilience and new beginnings. I watched him, my heart full of gratitude and determination to be the father he deserved. As we ate, we talked about everything from school to our plans for the weekend. Laura would join us later, another constant in this journey. Her teenage resilience had been a surprise, her quiet understanding a balm to my weary soul. Together we had forged a new normal, one built on trust and mutual support. The restaurant incident, once a moment of embarrassment, had evolved into a pivotal chapter in our story. It was the catalyst that propelled us toward justice and healing. In hindsight, calling the manager over had been about much more than drawing attention to Sandra's antics. It was about reclaiming control, about setting a new course when the old one had led us astray. Now, sitting there with Michael, I realized that justice was not just about punishment or restitution. It was about regaining our sense of self, our strength, and our unity as a family. And as we finished our breakfast, I knew that we had achieved something far greater than victory in court. We had found our way back to each other.